this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. This is the Summer School Series. We try to talk as many college football teams as we can. And today, I'm joined by Adam Munstertiger. That means we are talking Colorado. Buff Stampede does a tremendous job covering that program. Adam, welcome back, man.
It's always great to be on with you. I was telling you before we hit record that this is like maybe the first time there has been like a week of no drama in Boulder. It's been kind of crazy since Deion, Coach Prime Sanders got to Boulder. There's a little bit more of a foundation, but still some question marks with this football team, especially obviously you have a couple guys with their jerseys retired and that are moving on to the NFL. And so I don't know if you can replace those guys necessarily, but it's going to be more of a balanced team, I feel like, in 2025.
100%. I did see Travis Hunter graduated today, so that was awesome to see as well. Or at least I saw it on social media today. I don't know if it happened on Thursday, but that was awesome to see. What's kind of the mindset and the vibe coming out of this program entering 25?
Well, it's an interesting situation, and it's something that Deion Sanders is not shied away from. I mean, this is the first time really in his coaching career he's going at it without having his sons on the team. So it's kind of this beginning of a new era for him as a head coach. And I think there were a lot of people outside of Colorado, even some people inside Colorado that were surprised that they thought that maybe once Shurmur and Shiloh Sanders went off to the professional ranks, that would be the end of him in Boulder. And he re-upped and signed this contract extension. So there's, I'm sure you see this with most fan bases. Folks were over the moon, just so excited for a couple years, and now they got to 9 wins, and it's like you kind of get greedy a little bit as a fan base. And it's like, okay, well, what's next? Well, I think the floor is pretty solid within this program, so much more solid than it was obviously before Coach Prime took over. But there's still questions about where's the ceiling, and is this going to be a developmental season after losing Travis Hunter and Shurmur Sanders, or is this going to be in a wide open Big 12? Another year where you can make a run at it, because, I think there's a lot of fan bases. They're going to feel optimistic in this conference going into the preseason, just like a year ago and last year. I mean, it was coin flip game after coin flip game after coin flip game. And you look at Colorado's schedule this year, and it's a lot of the same. So how much more balanced can they become? Will Robert Livingston's defense be as solid, maybe even take a step forward from last year? There are reasons for optimism, but also some depth concerns with this football team, I think, as you go into these summer months.
One thing I liked about this team last year a lot was their fight. They could have quit against Baylor, right? I thought the Texas Tech game started, so poorly for them. Texas Tech is all jacked up and the crowd's into it, and but they come back and they get that one. I just thought they showed like really good fight throughout, even when it looked like Nebraska was going to blow them out. Like they never really, they didn't win by 30, right? Like Colorado kept playing hard in that game. And I thought that was pretty admirable as well. Like obviously 9 wins is awesome, but I thought like how they got there, and they put the hammer down on people too. I mean, they smacked UCF. Like that was a game a lot of people had circled, and they're like, not today. we're going to go in there and get that one. So you mentioned, and a lot of that obviously was that the offense was just really hard to kill. they just kept finding answers, and Livingston's defense, got stops down the stretch. So Shurmur remains the offensive coordinator. You do lose, as you mentioned, Shurmur, Travis Hunter, LeJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn Jr., Will Shepherd. Just how different is this going to look?
Yeah, I think it's got to look different. It's got to look a lot different than the 10 personnel looks with Shurmur Sanders having that accuracy and arm talent that, I don't think you can debate some of the stuff about the draft stuff, but I don't think anybody's debating that he's got the quarterback talent that's much better than a 5th round pick, right?
Yes.
And
totally.
So you're having to replace that. And so it's got to be a more balanced attack. And that was something that, frankly, Bud, as a media member, we got sick of having asked these coaches about the last couple of years. Where's the balance? Where's the balance? You can't compete for championships if you have no running game. And that really was the case for Colorado the last two years. And dead last in the FBS ranks in rushing offense the last 2 seasons. You cannot have that happen again in 2025 and expect to achieve your goals. You bring in Caden Salter, a quarterback transfer from Liberty that is a true dual threat. And I think that could just balance out your offense pretty quickly right there, because that was not going to be a threat with Shedeur Sanders. He was going to maybe carry the ball just enough. And in a lot of games, not even enough to keep the defenses honest. And so I think it's going to be a different look offense this year, assuming that Salter is the guy that beats out Julian Lewis for the quarterback job. But I look at that running back position, and they lost a couple talented guys. Isaiah Gustav came in from Arkansas last year and showed a lot of potential. And there's video out there of Deion Sanders on Well Off Media talking publicly about how that Virginia tampered and stole him away. So that's a position that I go, okay, you've got 4 scholarship guys at running back. When you've covered college football and followed it as long as we have, and the folks out there listening, you're usually not going to get through a season with that. So that's a concern in terms of that balance element. But I think having a dual threat quarterback is really going to help Pat Shurmur quite a bit. They're going to go a little bit more 11, 12 personnel, probably still primarily a 10 personnel offense, but you've got a quarterback now, I think, in Caden Salter, that can really run the RPO game and cause some opposing defense coordinators to have some sleepless nights, because he is that type of athlete out of that position.
Question for you here. So, I not that it takes a genius to run quarterback run stuff, but in looking through Shurmur's career, it seems like he's mostly been like a pro style only, tight end offensive line coach when he was a positional coach before he, became a coordinator. Have they talked at all about, have they brought somebody else in who has more experience with like the college QB run game stuff or consultants or anything like that? Or is that just not something we'd hear about?
Byron Leftwich was around the program a little bit this spring, and we're not quite sure at this point what his involvement's going to be. But really, I think it goes back to when you look at Pat Shurmur's resume, he was in the professional ranks, and he talks a lot to us media members about the fact that, like, just the way the rosters are constructed in the NFL, you had to call things a certain way. And so he's kind of found some freedom, I think, in terms of, and it really seems like he's just rejuvenated as a person. He's a grandfather now and just seems to be really enjoying the spot he's in. But I would say after the last couple of years, Bud, you'd have to put Pat Shurmur as a question mark in terms of his play calling. And just, it's kind of let's see what he does without Shedeur Sanders and being able to, kind of rely on his arm strength. And let's see if this truly can be, again, a balanced offense. Balance. That's the word that has kept coming up all off season for Colorado. And because everybody knows that they've got to have that now. And if Pat Shurmur can really embrace that, I think this is an offense that could actually be just as good from an output standpoint as before, just because it will be more balanced. But they got to show that. And again, there's depth concerns at running back. Tight end is a little thin as well. You like what they've done with the offensive line this offseason. You've got a lot more bodies competing for starting spots that have significant FBS starting experience on the offensive line this year. That was something that they really had little to none of that first year with Deion Sanders and Boulder. And then it got a little bit better last year, but not enough to, keep Shedeur Sanders from running for his life in a lot of those games. The O-line should be a tick better again this year. So I think this is going to be a big season for Pat Shurmur, just from no longer do you have Shedeur Sanders. Let's really see what your capability is as a play caller at this level.
Adam, you mentioned if Salter does beat out the very talented freshman Julian Lewis, is that a result you expect?
I do. I just don't know how you bridge that experience gap, right? Sure. Caden Salter went undefeated at Liberty a couple of years ago. Was his conference's offensive player of the year, rushed for over 1,000 yards. Took a bit of a dip last year, which is not having quite as much talent around him and some other stuff going on there at Liberty last year. But this is a guy that has played a lot of football, is so well versed in the RPO game. It's so much to ask Julian Lewis, who is not just an early enrollee, true freshman, but he was initially in the 2026 class. At one point, he was actually the #1 ranked overall recruit in that 2026 class. So he should be a junior in high school right now, finishing up that junior year. And there were a couple times in Colorado's spring game, which Julian Lewis got an opportunity to go against the first team defense throughout, where you looked out there and said, yeah, that looks like somebody that should still be in high school. Now, how much can he kind of bridge that gap here in the next few months? I think learning those lessons from the spring game, getting those nerves out in front of fans and all that stuff is probably going to help him. And it was a big deal for him to be on campus this spring. But it's hard to envision a scenario in which he beats out Caden Salter. Now, I think he's going to be the #2 guy, and I think he's going to push Caden Salter. I don't think Colorado's going to name a starting quarterback. I think leading up to the opener, there'll probably be some leaks that come out that we have some idea of what's going to happen there. But I think Julian Lewis needs to develop a little bit, and I think this is a good opportunity behind someone like Caden Salter to learn behind for a year if he's not rushed into it.
If the drop-off on offense is just moderate and not, really big, which I don't think anybody would blame Colorado or Deion if it is, given exactly what they lost to the draft. And also, some of these dudes who didn't get drafted are pretty damn good, undrafted free agent prospects as well, and very good college players. If it is just kind of a moderate drop-off, who are the backs and receivers who will have stepped up to make it so?
Well, Dylan Hayden came in last year as a transfer from Ohio State, and he had a really decent run there. He wasn't ever Ohio State's feature back, but he put up some nice stats there as an underclassman, comes into Colorado, and he did have a high ankle sprain early in the season. You were just struggling to have any type of balance offensively. The offensive line wasn't getting the push you wanted. And so Dallin Hayden had a disappointing season last year with the Buffs. They rotated some different guys through there. Injuries were kind of piling up at that position at different points last season. But he was somebody that really impressed Marshall Faulk. Obviously a Hall of Fame running back that knows a little bit about the position. And he seems to think that Dallin Hayden could be their guy this year. Michael Welch is another guy coming back as a second-year Buff that could be big in that running game as well. And then they brought in DeKalen Taylor from Incarnate Word, who they're expecting to have a pretty big role as kind of a scat back type, kind of like what Dylan Edwards was for the Buffs a couple years ago, what he is for Kansas State now. So those are going to be kind of the guys you look at that running back position. Again, I think that if Isaiah Augustive was still in the program, you'd feel much better about that group. You kind of worry about, okay, one or two of these guys go down. Now all of a sudden you're moving receivers over to play running back. That's kind of where the depth concerns come in there. At receiver, Draylon Miller is the guy to keep an eye on, a former All-American from the high school ranks. And Shedeur Sanders actually cut his spring break short because he wanted Draylon Miller to participate in his pro timing day throwing events. So that just kind of shows you the trajectory he's been in this program. And you looked out there, and Draylon Miller was the only guy. He's a true sophomore that wasn't going off to the NFL this year that was participating in that. And he looked the part. He looked like he could, potentially get drafted this year. So he's a guy that I think is going to have a really big breakout season for the Buffs.
Adam, this is going to be really, really fascinating to watch. Let's hit a break here. On the flip side, talk a little Buffs defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Hey guys, welcome back here to Summer School on the Cover 3 College Football Podcast. That's Adam Munstertiger of Buff Stampede. We are talking Colorado. Just gave you the rundown on the Colorado offense. Let's switch to the defense now, which does lose a pretty good bit as well, including a corner named Travis Hunter, I think. Have you ever seen a guy as good at baiting quarterbacks as that guy? I mean, maybe his head coach, but he did it in 7-on-7 in high school, and I was like, God, like he just does it in college too. It's amazing to see it in a real game with athletes at that level.
Just the instincts and how quickly. I mean, some of the interceptions he had at Colorado that were the most amazing were he's picking off passes that weren't even to the guy he was covering, and it was pretty incredible. Yeah, no, it's it's hard to put words into what Travis Hunter can do on the football field. And no, I had to pinch myself going out to New York to cover the Heisman because I cover the Colorado Buffaloes. We've seen some rough football, and so I don't think I ever expected that moment in my career. But he's incredible, and I'm anxious to see what he does with the Jaguars. And I think it's a great situation for him that they're going to allow him to be him. They're going to let him play both ways because that's really where he's at his best. And certainly you're going to take more hits in the NFL. You're not going to play as many snaps as he did at Colorado, but no, it's I think I could write a book about Travis Hunter.
Maybe you should. I'd certainly read it. Okay, now in the NFL, I know we'll get back to the Colorado preview here. I guess you have, I know you could play him both ways. You probably can't play full-time both ways. So would you play him like full-time corner red zone receiver or like red zone high leverage receiver, or would you play him full-time receiver like red zone high leverage third down corner?
I like his ability to impact games just a little bit more on offense. So I would go more heavy offensively and then, pick your spots defensively. And he's certainly it's going to be tough for someone with his frame to play nickelback in the NFL. But I mean, he even did that at Colorado. He plays bigger than his frame. He's more physical than you would think just seeing him in street clothes. So I would ease him in defensively and have him more full-time offensively, especially, for a team like the Jaguars that, needs that firepower offensively.
I think that makes sense. And if you did use him like red zone corner, you're running fewer coverage concepts. Like there's certain concepts just spacing wise, you're not going to run in the deep red zone. So it's a little more, typically a little more man or some tango stuff. So that'd be fascinating. For Colorado, of the guys they lost, who are you most confident they can replace and not lose a step?
Well, they're never really going to have to worry about cornerback as long as Deion Sanders is the head coach in Boulder. You lose Travis Hunter, but they're still going to be able to play a lot of press man, which is allowing Robert Livingston to be more aggressive with some of his concepts and schemes and blitzes. And that really worked out well for them last year. DJ McKinney is a cornerback that is a junior right now, a former Oklahoma State transfer that I could see potentially going to the NFL next year. He was really good on playing opposite Travis Hunter last year. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm worried about the linebacker position. Vonta Bentley and Nikhai Hill-Green were a really dynamic duo for the Buffaloes last year. That was, a year ago when we talked. I'd have to go back and watch the interview, but I would say those two were a question mark at that point. But they really lived up to the hype. Nikhai Hill-Green has since transferred to Alabama, and Vonta Bentley's off to the NFL. So you're replacing those two guys. They brought in a couple transfers in Reginald Hughes Jr. and Martavius French that have experience at the FBS level that they like, that had decent springs. But when I looked at what Livingston's defense did much better than I expected them to going into last year, it was those two guys at linebacker. And we just haven't seen enough of these new guys to know if that's going to be a drop off or not.
Question for you on a guy that I've always just followed with some interest, and because I live in Orlando, and I remember a guy who's no longer with the company couldn't get to a Tampa camp, so he called me and was like, "Can you drive over?" I was like, "Yeah," and I got there in time, and there was like a weird Louisiana showcase happening in Tampa, like on one of those bus tour type things. Dude's name was Quincy Wiggins, who signed. I think he ended up at LSU, and then he transferred to Colorado. I didn't hear much about him last year, but I was like, how? Like, this guy does not look like a normal college. Like, he is freaky looking. Is there any chance he's going to turn it on?
Yeah, I mean, when you got to that camp, he probably stood out first, right?
Yes.
I mean, from a physicality standpoint. Yeah, it's funny because after the spring game, Deion Sanders said, he looks like Tarzan. Like, that is how you would draw up a defensive edge guy. That's how they're supposed to look. He just has not put it all together. Like you mentioned, he was at LSU coming out, stayed close to home, was the number one ranked recruit coming out of the state of Louisiana when he came out of high school. Came in last year and he didn't play a ton. He was on special teams, but he developed a really strong bond with Deion Sanders. And it's one of those things where I think if that didn't happen, he probably would have fizzled out, hit the portal, gone somewhere else. But Deion Sanders has really taken a strong interest in him. And I just did a story the other day about 10 guys in this program that really made a big jump just from their personal stock this spring. And Quincy Wiggins is high on that list. Again, he looks the part. And if he puts it together, he's going to be a regular contributor for them. He was with the first team defense during the spring game. So his elevation, it seems to finally be coming along. It took some time, though, when he got to college to kind of just, learn all the nuances and figure out just, day-to-day scheduling. And that's something that Deion Sanders has been on about, getting to class and doing everything right. And so he is one of those guys that should break through for the Buffs this year.
Is there a guy on defense we have not spoken about yet who you're like, man, if this guy does turn it on and we see those early signs, my stock projection for this team goes way up in that first month?
Well, Jaheim Otis, transfer from Alabama, a former blue chip recruit that early on during his time with the Crimson Tide as a defensive tackle there, he was kind of the next in line to be one of those big time early round draft picks out of Alabama. But he suffered a couple injuries, ended up sitting out last year, redshirting. And so he looked healthy this spring. You put him in that defensive line mix with Anquan Barnes, another, 320 plus pound guy in there. You're going to help those linebackers out a great deal. Again, I mentioned that's a question mark I have about this defense, but if you have Jaheim Otis and Anquan Barnes eating up those guys in the trenches, clearing lanes for those guys, it's going to make this defense look a whole lot better. So I think their defensive line will be better. But it's a lot of guys that have kind of dealt with this nick here and dealt with this, that's what you see throughout the transfer portal, right? As guys that have these different stories of why it didn't work out at the last place. But certainly this spring, it seemed like Jaheim Otis was ready to, kind of make a name for himself as maybe getting back into that NFL discussion in a couple years.
Not that we can make definitive statements about the Big 12 schedule, because I feel like the Big 12 is just kind of a coin flip every year, but generally there are some teams that produce a little better than others, and you get a couple of those on the schedule, but also some of the more bottom feeders from last year. Start with Georgia Tech, which could be a difficult opener for a team that loses a lot in the Buffs, but also it's in Colorado, so like you got to feel like they have a pretty good shot to take that one. How do you define success for this Colorado team?
Well, you've finally gotten into a situation where last year they were bowl eligible. You don't want to revert back to below that, right? I mean, I think that's the key. I felt every year since Deion Sanders has been at Colorado that the floor of this team is higher than what a lot of the national prognosticators think. Like the over-under the first year was 3.5. Last year, I think it was 5.5. I think it's back to 5.5 again this year. That seems low to me, but again, there are enough question marks to go, okay, is this going to be a team that's going to be contending for the Big 12 championship again this year like they were last year? I don't know. But I do feel confidently that the talent has risen in this program to a level to where you've got to expect this team to be going to a bowl game, going to the postseason, winning at the bare minimum 6 games.
I also think the road trips are fairly manageable. Like, not that, I mean, TCU is a pretty good team. I think we just did that one. Houston, not an incredible road trip to have to make. Now, I mean, West Virginia, never an easy place to go, but they are restarting pretty hard reset under Rich Rod. So if you have to go play the Mountaineers, 25 is probably the year that you would want to go do so. I would think. So I can see that. I mean, FanDuel's got them 6.5, right? For and pretty even juice. So like that would be that'd make a lot of sense, and I think would establish just continued consistency there. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, and it is tough. I think more so, and you've done all these segments, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. But it's got to be harder with Big 12 teams from a record prediction standpoint than any other conference right now, right?
I think so, because there's so many. Like in the SEC, there's a lot of round up, round down. I mean, you get a lot of, like, if you're just doing probabilities, this is a very lazy man's way to do it, but like, you're going to have a lot of times where it's okay, they're 90%, 90%, 90%, or on the flip side, like 10%, 10%. I mean, you're just kind of round up win, loss, win, loss. The Big 12, I mean, I think there's a reason why a lot of these books have not offered some of these alt win totals, right? Because when you have so many 50-50 games, the chance that you go 7-1 in your coin flips, it is, a lot like your variance in terms of potential record is so much greater to the good and to the bad. And how many guaranteed wins or guaranteed losses do you have on a Big 12 schedule? I think it's, probably 1.5, 2x of what you have on some of the SEC or maybe some of the very top or bottom end Big 10 schedules. So yeah, I agree with you. Like a lot of these books didn't hang Colorado's win total last year was what, like 6.5, 6, something like that. I don't think they put up an alternate win total of like 4.5 till like right before the season. And even then it was like very, very low limits or, like above, which is probably 8.5. So it was interesting to track for sure.
It does make for some riveting football, though.
Absolutely. I love watching
you're checking out tiebreakers going into the final week of the season when you're covering the Big 12, following the Big 12. Yeah, parity can be fun. It was last year. I felt like in the Big 12.
I think it's week in, week out probably has the most entertaining games. Some of the wildest results as well. They may not have like a true team. It's like, yeah, they can hang natty wise, but there are very few programs that just stink. And like everybody's pretty competitive, and every game could be a game, which is awesome. I kind of think your mark should lean into that even more in terms of marketing. Like from an entertainment perspective, it's pretty rare you turn on a Big 12 game and it's not at least fairly close going into half.
Yeah.
Also, timing wise, just final note here. Houston lost like its entire secondary to the portal in the last like month. So getting them early, I think, before those guys understand how to play with each other is probably a pretty big advantage for the Buffs there. I'd rather get them early than late, although I guess the counter argument to that would be they probably lack depth now. So maybe you get them late, attrition hits them. But
yeah, it's gonna be hot down there too in early September. But most of Colorado's roster, I guess, is from the south. So
I was going to say, Deion does not recruit. How many kids from north of Colorado does Deion recruit?
Not many. Yeah, very few. They do kind of recruit nationally, but yeah, they very much the bulk of the roster is Texas, Florida, Georgia, in that region.
Absolutely. Adam, really enjoyed it, man. Appreciate this.
Always enjoy it. Thanks, bud.